The last days of Elijah, when heaven watched the prophet's final walk. The air was heavy that day, not with the scent of rain or the cry of a storm, but with destiny itself. From the mountains of Gilgal to the rolling plains of Jordan, the land of Israel seemed to stand still.
Welcome to Faith, Prayer, and Inspirational 2, where faith inspires and hope shines.
The winds whispered softly through the olive trees, carrying a message that only heaven could understand. The time of Elijah, the fiery prophet of God, was drawing to an end. He had walked the earth with a presence that made kings tremble and nations bow. Through him, the heavens had shut and opened at the command of his voice. Fire had fallen from the skies at his prayer. Every step he took carried the weight of heaven's authority. But on this day, the Lord had spoken again, not to send fire, but to summon his prophet home. And somewhere close behind him walked a young man, Elisha, the one chosen by God to carry the mantle forward. His eyes were steady, yet heavy with emotion. He knew what was coming, though his heart refused to accept it. Sun behind small cloud, the silent beginning. As dawn broke over Gilgal, Elijah rose quietly. His rough cloak of camel hair brushed against the stones, his staff steady in hand. The years had carved strength into his face, the strength of one who had seen both famine and fire, fear and faith. "Elisha," he said gently, his voice deep but calm, "stay here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel." But Elisha bowed his head and replied with the loyalty of a son, "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." And together they walked on. Each step they took was more than a journey. It was a transition between worlds. Heaven was preparing to receive one of its greatest servants. Bethel, the house of God. At Bethel, a small group of young prophets came out to meet them. They bowed in reverence, whispering among themselves, "Knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today?" Elisha nodded but said nothing. His heart was heavy. "Yes," he whispered softly, "I know it. Hold your peace." Elijah's eyes gazed toward the horizon. Beyond Bethel lay Jericho, and beyond Jericho, the Jordan River, the threshold between earth and heaven's call. Once again, the prophet turned and spoke. "Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho." But Elisha's answer did not change. "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." And the two continued walking, the journey of fire and faith. Through the dusty paths of Jericho, Elijah walked as a man already half in heaven. The same streets that once witnessed Israel's victory now watched the last footsteps of the man who called down fire from the sky. At Jericho, the sons of the prophets came again, repeating their question. And again, Elisha's reply was quiet but firm. "Yes, I know. Hold your peace." The time was drawing near. Even the wind began to shift, swirling with a strange warmth, a sign that the chariots of heaven were already in motion. And for the last time, Elijah turned to Elisha and said, "Tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan." But Elisha's loyalty could not be shaken. "As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee." So they went on together, two men, one destiny. Water waved the Jordan, the river of separation. When they reached the banks of the Jordan, the river flowed wide and strong. The current shimmered under the morning light, but Elijah did not stop. He removed his mantle, that rough, ancient cloak that carried the scent of wilderness, the dust of deserts, and the fire of God's power. He rolled it tightly in his hand and struck the waters. Immediately the river parted. The waters stood still on both sides, and the two men walked across on dry ground. There were no crowds to cheer, no priests with trumpets. Only heaven watching as its prophet crossed from mortality into immortality. High voltage, a moment between heaven and earth. As they stepped onto the other side, silence filled the air. Even the birds paused mid-flight. Elijah turned and faced Elisha. His eyes, old yet burning with divine light, softened. "Ask what I shall do for thee before I be taken away from thee." Elisha's voice trembled, but his faith stood firm. "I pray thee," he said, Let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me." Elijah looked upward for a moment, then answered, "Thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so." And with that, the heavens began to stir. The wind rose suddenly, swirling dust and light around them. The sky turned gold and crimson, and the sound of horses echoed in the distance. Not from the earth, but from above. Heaven was opening, the fiery chariot. Then, in a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, a chariot of fire appeared. Horses of flame thundered across the heavens, and the ground trembled as divine fire whirled between the two men. Elisha fell backward, shielding his face, crying out, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof." In that instant, Elijah was lifted upward body and soul, carried by the chariot of God. The winds roared with celestial might, and the sky closed behind him, leaving only the echo of fire and the scent of heaven. And as the whirlwind faded, something drifted down, slow, silent, and glowing like molten gold. It was the mantle, the symbol of power, the covenant of anointing, the continuation of God's fire on earth. Elisha picked it up with trembling hands, and in that moment, heaven's power moved again, not ending, but beginning anew. Elisha and the power of the mantle when the Jordan parted again. The wind was still echoing with fire. The ground trembled softly beneath Elisha's feet, and the air shimmered where the chariot of heaven had disappeared. The prophet of fire was gone, but his spirit had not departed from the earth. Elisha stood alone now, his heart pounding with both sorrow and awe. In his hands lay the mantle, rough, worn, and yet warm with divine energy. He pressed it to his face, and tears streamed down his cheeks. My father, he whispered again. The voice was not of grief alone, but of reverence, for he knew he had witnessed what no other mortal had ever seen. The mantle of power. Elisha turned slowly toward the river Jordan. The same river that had parted moments ago now flowed calmly, as though nothing divine had ever touched it. But heaven was waiting. He rolled the mantle, just as his master had done. The waters split apart, rising in glittering walls on both sides. Dry ground appeared beneath his feet, and Elisha walked through, no longer as a student, but as the prophet of God. When the sons of the prophets saw it from afar, they fell to their knees. The spirit of Elijah doth rest on Elisha, they cried. Herb the healing of Jericho's water. Word spread quickly across the land. From Gilgal to Samaria, people whispered, the power of the Lord still moves in Israel. Soon after, the people of Jericho came to Elisha. Their voices were anxious, their faces weary. Behold, the situation of this city is pleasant, they said, but the water is bad and the ground barren. Elisha listened, then said simply, bring me a new cruse and put salt therein. They obeyed, and Elisha walked with quiet authority to the spring. He cast the salt into the water and lifted his hand toward heaven. Thus saith the Lord, he declared, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. At that moment, the stream glowed with gentle light. The taste of bitterness vanished. The water became pure, clear as crystal, and life returned to the land. Generations would later drink from that same spring and remember, the God of Elijah still heals. The mockers at Bethel. But not all hearts honored God's prophet. As Elisha traveled toward Bethel, a group of insolent young men came from the city, mocking him. Their voices rang through the air. Go up, thou bald head. Go up, thou bald head. They mocked not only his appearance but the miracle of Elijah's ascension. They ridiculed the very work of God. Elisha stopped, turned, and looked upon them with the sadness of heaven in his eyes. He pronounced a curse, not from hatred, but from divine justice. From the nearby forest came 2 she-bears, stirred by God's command, and they tore through the mockers. The laughter ceased, replaced by holy fear. From that day onward, the people of Israel learned that the anointing of heaven was not to be mocked. Time passed, and Elisha's fame grew throughout Israel. Kings sought his counsel, widows sought his prayers, and heaven answered wherever he went. One day, a widow came to him, her eyes swollen from tears. "Thy servant, my husband, is dead," she said. "Thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take my 2 sons to be bondmen." Elisha's heart moved with compassion. "What hast thou in the house?" he asked. "Nothing," she said softly, "save a pot of oil." Elisha smiled, for he saw faith hidden in her small supply. "Go," he said, "borrow vessels, empty vessels, not a few, and when thou art come in, shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and pour out into all those vessels." She obeyed. Behind closed doors, the oil began to flow, from one pot to another and another until every vessel was full. When she cried out, "Bring me yet another vessel," her son answered, "There is not a vessel more," and the oil stayed. Elisha told her, "Go, sell the oil and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest." Thus did the Lord prove again that obedience opens the door to abundance. The Shunammite woman. Not long after, in the quiet town of Shunem, lived a woman of great faith and kindness. She saw Elisha passing often by her home and said to her husband, "Behold, I perceive that this is an holy man of God. Let us make a little chamber for him." They built a small upper room with a bed, a table, a stool, and a lamp. And every time the prophet came by, he rested there. One day, as gratitude filled his heart, Elisha asked, "What is to be done for thee?" The woman desired nothing for herself. But Gehazi, the servant, said, "She hath no child, and her husband is old." Elisha turned to her and declared, "About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son." She gasped in disbelief, but a year later, the promise came true. The child restored to life. Years later, the boy fell sick and died suddenly in his mother's arms. In sorrow but faith, she laid him on Elisha's bed and set out to find the prophet. When she found him at Mount Carmel, she fell at his feet and cried, "Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" Elisha rose immediately. He sent Gehazi ahead with his staff, but the child did not awaken. Then Elisha himself entered the room, shut the door, and prayed unto the Lord. He stretched himself upon the child, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands, and the flesh of the child grew warm. He paced the room, prayed again, and lay upon the boy once more. Suddenly, the child sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisha called the mother and said, "Take up thy son." She fell to the ground, weeping in worship. For through her tears she saw the truth. The same power that carried Elijah into heaven now lived in the prophet who stood before her. The double anointing, when heaven multiplied its power through Elisha. The days that followed Elijah's ascension marked a new dawn in Israel. The mantle had fallen, the river had parted, and the Spirit of the Lord now rested upon a man who once poured water on Elijah's hands. Elisha walked not in the shadow of his master, but in the light of the same God who had commanded the fire and the rain. The people began to see that the promise had been fulfilled. The double portion had come. He was no longer just a servant of the prophet. He was now the vessel of the Almighty, the purifying hand of God. In the days that followed, Elisha's works began to multiply. Each miracle carried heaven's signature, quiet, pure, and powerful. When famine swept through the land, a pot of stew was prepared for the sons of the prophets. But in haste, wild gourds, poisonous in nature, were mixed in. As they began to eat, they cried out, "O man of God, there is death in the pot." Elisha did not panic. He simply said, "Then bring meal." He cast the meal into the pot and commanded, "Pour out for the people that they may eat." They ate, and no harm came upon them. The poison vanished, and life returned to their bodies. Through this, God reminded his people that a touch of divine grace can turn death into life and bitterness into nourishment. Bread, the miracle of multiplication. Soon after, a man came from Baal-Shalisha, bringing to Elisha 20 loaves of barley bread and some ears of corn. It was a small gift, hardly enough for a multitude of hungry prophets and travelers gathered around the man of God. But Elisha's spirit stirred with divine remembrance. He said to his servant, "Give unto the people, that they may eat." The servant looked at the crowd and asked, "What? Should I set this before 100 men?" Elisha's voice was calm, steady, and full of faith. "Thus saith the Lord, they shall eat, and shall leave thereof." He distributed the loaves, and the people began to eat. Miraculously, the food multiplied. There was enough for everyone, and still fragments remained. The same God who fed Israel in the wilderness, the same power that would one day feed 5,000 through the hands of Christ, was revealed again through his servant Elisha. Naaman the leper, far beyond Israel, in the land of Syria, lived a mighty warrior, Naaman, captain of the host of the king. Victorious in battle, honored by men, yet afflicted with the shame of leprosy. One day, a captive Hebrew maid told Naaman's wife, "If my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, he would recover him of his leprosy." The words reached the king, who sent Naaman with silver, gold, and garments to the king of Israel. But the king feared, saying, "Am I God, to kill and to make alive?" When Elisha heard of it, he sent word, "Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel." Naaman arrived in splendor with chariots, soldiers, and servants, expecting the prophet to meet him with ceremony. But Elisha did not even step outside. He sent a simple message through his servant, "Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee." Naaman's pride flared. "Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel?" he cried. "May I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned away in anger, but one of his servants gently said, "My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it?" Naaman paused, humbled. Then he went down to the Jordan. Once, twice, 3 times. The water rippled as he obeyed. By the 7th time, when he rose again, his flesh became like that of a child, pure and whole. He fell to his knees, tears in his eyes, and declared, "Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel." Axe, the floating axe head. Years later, the sons of the prophets were building a new dwelling by the Jordan. As they worked, one of them cried out, "Alas, master, for it was borrowed." For the axe head had flown off and sunk deep into the river. Elisha walked to the edge of the water, calm and composed. "Where fell it?" he asked. They pointed to the spot. He cut a small stick, cast it into the river, and the iron floated. Gasps filled the air as the axe head rose to the surface like a leaf on water. "Take it up to thee," Elisha said simply. Heaven had again reminded Israel that nothing is too small for divine attention. The same God who splits the sea can raise an axe from the deep. The invisible army of heaven. But the greatest of Elisha's revelations came not through miracles of matter, but of sight. The king of Syria waged war against Israel, but every secret plan he made was revealed by Elisha to the king of Israel. Frustrated, the Syrian king sent soldiers to surround Dothan by night and capture the prophet. When Elisha's servant awoke and saw the city surrounded by horses and chariots, he trembled. "Alas, my master, how shall we do?" Elisha's eyes, full of divine calm, looked toward the hills. "Fear not," he said, "for they that be with us are more than they that be with them." Then he prayed, "Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see." And the servant's eyes were opened. He looked, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. The armies of heaven had encamped around the man of God. When the enemy advanced, Elisha prayed again, "Smite this people, I pray thee, with blindness." And the soldiers groped in confusion. Elisha led them harmlessly into Samaria, where they were fed and released. Through this, Israel learned once again that those who walk with God are never outnumbered. Years passed, but the light of heaven upon Elisha did not fade. From his hands flowed miracles. From his lips came words that shaped kings and guided nations. And though Elijah had gone in a whirlwind, his spirit still moved, alive within his successor. The double portion was real. It was visible, powerful, and undeniable. Everywhere Elisha went, heaven followed. The siege of Samaria, faith in the famine. One of the darkest hours in Israel's history came when the Syrian army besieged Samaria. The famine became so severe that the people were reduced to despair. Kings tore their garments in anguish, and hopelessness covered the land like dust. But in the midst of ruin, the voice of the prophet spoke. Thus saith the Lord, tomorrow about this time shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria. A soldier mocked him, saying, Behold, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, might this thing be? Elisha's eyes burned with the fire of faith. Behold, he said, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. That night heaven moved unseen. The Lord caused the Syrian camp to hear the sound of chariots and horses, a noise like a vast army approaching. Fear seized them. They fled in terror, leaving food, gold, and supplies behind. When the people of Samaria discovered the empty camp the next morning, they rushed out, gathered food, and the prophecy came true exactly as spoken. And the doubting soldier saw it, but as the crowd surged at the gate, he was trampled and died. Thus did the word of the Lord stand firm. Heaven always fulfills what it declares. Elisha's ministry stretched beyond miracles. It was filled with divine foresight. He called the Shunammite woman, the one whose son had been raised, and warned her, Arise, and go thou and thine household, and sojourn wheresoever thou canst. For the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. She obeyed. When the famine ended, she returned and found strangers possessing her land. But by divine timing, the king was just hearing Gehazi recount Elisha's miracles. As she entered to plead her cause, Gehazi cried, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. The king restored her land, her house, and every harvest she had lost. In every age, God confirms this truth. Obedience preserves destiny. Years later, Elisha grew old. His beard had turned white, and his once strong hands trembled. Yet the fire in his spirit still blazed. King Joash of Israel came to him, weeping, and said, O my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. The same words Elisha once cried over Elijah, now spoken to him. Elisha said, Take bow and arrows. The king obeyed. Elisha placed his frail hands over the king's and said, Open the window eastward. The window opened toward the land of the enemy. Shoot, Elisha said. The arrow flew through the air, bright under the sun. And Elisha declared, The arrow of the Lord's deliverance, and the arrow of deliverance from Syria. Then he said, Smite upon the ground. The king struck 3 times and stopped. Elisha's eyes filled with sorrow. Thou shouldest have smitten 5 or 6 times. Then hadst thou smitten Syria till thou hadst consumed it. But now thou shalt smite Syria but thrice. Even in his last hours, heaven's voice still spoke through him, teaching Israel that half-hearted faith limits divine victory. The passing of Elisha. Not long after, the prophet of fire and mercy lay upon his bed, surrounded by silence. There was no whirlwind this time, no chariot of fire, only peace. For Elijah had been taken alive, but Elisha's work was to finish among men. Across the ages, from the whirlwind of Elijah to the breath of Elisha, one truth shines through. God's anointing is not a moment. It is a living current that flows through obedience, faith, and surrender. Elijah's courage ignited the flame. Elisha's humility multiplied it. And even now, the same Spirit moves through all who yield their hearts to heaven. When the mantle falls, the question is not who will watch, but who will pick it up. Sun behind small cloud thus ends the story of Elijah and the divine transfer to Elisha. A tale of fire, faith, and the eternal power of God that never fades. If this story of faith and fire has blessed your spirit, do not let it end here. Share this message, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe to Faith, Prayer, and Inspiration too. where every story draws you closer to the power of God.